Hello everyone, this is Matt Strapp back with another video, and we are covering the Seattle Kraken mock draft for their expansion draft team coming next year. Now, I have been doing research over the past month to try to make this as realistic as possible because some of the videos I've seen out there uh, have I don't quite agree with them, and I wanted to put my take out on it. So I hope you guys enjoy, and let's get to it. All right, so now let's get into the rules that I use for this mock draft. Now, I'm assuming that the rules aren't going to change as much as the 2017 expansion draft, so we're going to keep that the same. So, those rules are the following. The protected list of the rosters can either be 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie, or 8 skaters and 1 goalie. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages to both. The first protection is you get to protect more players, but the second one you can kind of choose to protect like the forward group or the defensive group. It doesn't matter. It really just depends on how your team or what team has its roster structured. All players who have no movement clauses must be protected. There's no exceptions to that. The first and second year players are exempt from the expansion draft, and I have to select 14 forwards, 9 defensemen, and 3 goalies minimum. And then I have to meet the minimum of 20 players who will be under the contract the following season. That was really hard for me to do. I barely made that 20 player mark, and that was probably the hardest part of this mock draft. And then I must meet the minimum of 66% of this year's salary cap, and after some math, it's about $54 million at minimum. So, with all the rules, let's dive into this mock draft. So, from the Anaheim Ducks, I think the Kraken are going to draft Nicolas Deslauriers. He's a good left winger. He's just under 30, and I think he's a decent fourth line guy for the Kraken if they were to draft him. Now, some possibilities that the Anaheim Ducks could face is that I don't really think that they'll protect their roster nor entice Seattle to take a specific player, unlike in 2017, where they coughed up Shea Theodore, and that definitely did not age well. But some other players that they might draft from the Ducks are Mac Jones, Christian Juice, or Jacob Larson. All right, so from the Arizona Coyotes, I predict the Seattle Kraken will draft Darcy Kuemper. Now, a lot of the videos that I saw had Seattle taking Antti Raanta. Now, the only issue I have with this is that Antti Raanta, I believe, is the more better goaltender. Yes, he's 1 year older than Darcy Kuemper, but Darcy Kuemper is a fringe starter at best. He's a very good backup, but I don't think he's a good starter. So I think he will be a great backup for the Seattle Kraken. I do believe, because of the roster that the Coyotes have, they might cough up a draft pick to protect their roster. But other players that they might go after is Antti Raanta. You can never rule that out, even though I don't think they will. Michael Grabner or Jason Demers. From the Boston Bruins, I believe Seattle Kraken will draft Chris Wagner, who is a very good bottom 6 piece to have. I do believe Boston will offer Seattle a draft pick to protect the roster since they're pretty stacked, even though they have an aging core. I do believe that Seattle might go after other players such as Nick Ritchie, Andre Casa, or Jeremy Loizon. From the Buffalo Sabres, I believe Seattle Kraken will draft Jake McCabe. I believe he's a very solid defenseman, and Buffalo needs to shed some salary because they have a lot of bad contracts, so I can't rule out them enticing Seattle to take Kyle Okposo in order to do so. They might also go after players such as Zemgus Jurgensen, Johan Larsson, or Colin Miller. From the Calgary Flames, I believe the Seattle Kraken will draft Derek Ryan. Now, Calgary is a bit of an interesting situation since they have a pretty good roster, so they can either cough up a draft pick to protect their roster, or I could possibly see them taking Mark Giordano just because he's old and his contract's not very good. So I can see them in a shedding salary cap situation to entice Seattle to take him. But other players that might be exposed and what they might grab are Sam Bennett, TJ Brody, or Dylan Dubé. From the Carolina Hurricanes, I believe the Seattle Kraken will draft goalie Anton Forsberg, who I really personally like. I think he's a very good minor league goalie. That's purely what he would be drafted for, and as a possible emergency starter in case their starter and backup goes down. So he'd be a perfect third goalie fit. I could see Carolina possibly offering a draft pick to Seattle to protect their roster. Other players that they might draft from the Hurricanes are Jordan Martinhook, Brock McGinn, or Sammy Vatanen. From the Chicago Blackhawks, I believe Seattle Kraken will draft Zach Smith. He's a very good left wing, and I really do have a like for him, and I would draft him if I had to. I could see Chicago enticing Seattle to take Andrew Shaw's salary, just to shed some salary, get it off the books since they're already cap strapped as it is. But other players that Seattle might go after is Drake Kagula, Calvin Nahan, or Slater Cuckoo. From the Colorado Avalanche, I believe Seattle Kraken will draft Valerie Natushkin. Now, this is a very interesting roster. I think Colorado's very deep. Uh, I I wouldn't be surprised if they would offer a high draft pick to protect it. It just because, like I said, their roster is very good. Uh, some other players that Seattle might go after on Colorado is Matt Calvert, Vladislav Nemestikov, or Pavel Francouz. From the Columbus Blue Jackets, I believe Seattle Kraken will draft Riley Smith. He's a very solid center. I could see Columbus enticing Seattle to take Murray or Safar's salary off of them, or offer a draft pick to protect the roster altogether. Some other players that I could see Seattle grabbing are Devin Shore and Scott Harrington. From the Dallas Stars, I believe the Seattle Kraken will draft defenseman Jamie Oleksiak, who is a very big defenseman, and he would be a great addition to the back end. I don't see Dallas protecting their roster or enticing Seattle to take anybody, but I could see them drafting other players such as Matthias Janmark or Stephen Johns. From the Detroit Red Wings, I believe Seattle Kraken will draft defenseman Patrick Nemeth, who's a very good bottom pairing defenseman. I don't think Detroit is going to protect their roster because, quite frankly, there's not too much there. But I could see them enticing Seattle to take Justin Applicator, Franz Nielsen, or Trevor Daley as a shedding salary cap move because they really need to shed some cap and make room for their young guns. From the Edmonton Oilers, I believe the Seattle Kraken will draft Adam Larson, who's a very good defenseman. And I could see them offering a draft pick just to protect their roster. There are some exposed players that I could see them going after that Edmonton does not want to give up. Other players that Seattle could go after are Alex Chiasson, Riley Sheehan, or Matt Benning. From the Florida Panthers, I believe the Seattle Kraken will draft Eric Halla. I think he's a very good left wing. That would be good for a top 6 forward group. I don't think Florida is going to protect their roster or entice Seattle to take anybody from the roster specifically, but I could see them going after other players such as Lucas Wallmark, Mark Pizik, Mackenzie Wager, or Chris Drager. From the LA Kings, I believe the Seattle Kraken will draft defenseman Ben Hutton. their roster situation's not very good. I don't think that they'll protect or entice anyone to Seattle. But I could see Seattle drafting other players such as Martin Frk or Calvin Peterson. From the Minnesota Wild, I believe the Seattle Kraken will draft right wing Ryan Hartman. I think he's a very good right wing to have. He's has flashes of very good potential in this league, and I think he could break out on the right team. I could see Minnesota offering a draft pick to protect a roster, and other players that they might go after is Alex Galchenyuk, Carson Salcy, or Alex Stalock. From the Montreal Canadiens, I believe the Seattle Kraken will draft Charlie Lindgren. I think he's a very good AHL goalie to have in your minors. I think that's what his role will be. I can't rule out the possibility of Seattle grabbing Carl Alsner and an enticement from the Canadiens in order to shed that really bad contract. But I could see them going after other players such as Paul Byron or Jordan Weal. From the Nashville Predators, I believe the Seattle Kraken will draft right wing Craig Smith. Uh, Nashville could be in a very difficult situation. I could see them going at, or offering a draft pick to protect a roster since they have a very good roster. There's a lot of players that Seattle can go towards, but I can't rule out Seattle being enticed to take Kyle Turris since he hasn't been fitting well in Nashville, and especially at his contract hit, I can't rule it out. But other players that they might take is Austin Watson or Dante Fabro. From the New Jersey Devils, I believe the Seattle Kraken will take defenseman Mirko Mueller, who's a very good bottom pairing defenseman to have. I could see Seattle being enticed to grab Corey Schneider. Other people believe that somehow they'll take PK Subban. I don't see New Jersey coughing up PK Subban. But other players that New Jersey might be losing from or to Seattle is Dakota Mermis or Connor Carrick. For the New York Islanders, the Seattle Kraken will select center Derek Brassard. He's a very good center, and I can see him easily selected or being put in the top center spot on that team. I could see Seattle enticed to grab Johnny Boychuk or Andrew Ladd since both of their contracts are really bad right now. But they might go after other players such as Michael Dal-Cole or Scott Mayfield. From the draft lottery winning New York Rangers, the Seattle Kraken will draft right wing Jesper Fast. Now, I don't think New York will protect or entice Seattle to take anybody specifically from the roster, but other players that Seattle might grab are Brett Howden or Brandon Smith. From the Ottawa Senators, I believe Seattle Kraken will draft left wing Mikkel Bakker. I do believe he's a really good player. He needs to be put in that top line spot, and I've seen flashes in it in San Jose. Yes, he's a little overpaid, but I still think he would flourish in that top spot. I don't see Ottawa protecting a roster since Eugene Melnyk has run that franchise into the ground, and they don't have a very good roster to begin with. Or do I think they'll entice Seattle to take anybody? But other players that I could see Seattle grabbing are Jace Howerluck or Christian Wallin. From the Philadelphia Flyers, I believe the Seattle Kraken will draft defenseman Robert Haig. Now, I really think Philadelphia is going to be in a really tight spot with their forward and defensive group, especially their defensemen, if they don't offer a draft pick to Seattle in order to protect the roster. But other players I could see Seattle grabbing are Michael Raffl, Derek Grant, or Nicholas Aube-Kubel. From the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Seattle Kraken will draft center Zach Aston Reese. I could see Pittsburgh enticing Seattle to grab Jack Johnson just because his contract's really bad. But I could see them offering a draft pick to Seattle in order to protect their roster. And they might draft or pick other players such as Teddy Bluger or Justin Schultz. From the San Jose Sharks, the Seattle Kraken will draft defenseman Radim Simek. Uh, I don't think San Jose will protect their roster or entice Seattle to pick anybody specifically. Um, they're going through a steep rebuild, so their roster's pretty barren at this point. But they might draft other players such as Melker Karlsson or Aaron Dell. From the St. Louis Blues, the Seattle Kraken will draft defenseman Marco Scandella. Um, I could really see them protecting their roster and offering a draft pick in order to do so. They have a pretty solid roster right now, so I wouldn't do anything with it. They might draft other players such as Zach Sanford or Robert Pertuzzo. From the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Seattle Kraken will draft center Cedric Paquette. Now, this is a situation where I believe Tampa Bay will either be really in the hole and have to expose somebody good, or entice Seattle with a very high draft pick in order to protect the roster. Other players that they might go after are Blake Holtman, Barclay Goodrow, or Kevin Shattenkirk. From the Toronto Maple Leafs, I believe the Seattle Kraken will draft defenseman Justin Holl. I don't think this is a situation where they'll try to protect the roster or entice Seattle to pick anybody. But they might go after other players such as Frederick Gauthier or Jack Campbell. From the Vancouver Canucks, the Seattle Kraken will draft goaltender Jacob Markstrom. Now, this is a very interesting situation since they have a very good goaltending core. Other people had Seattle grabbing Thatcher Demko, and I don't think that Vancouver's going to cough him up, especially since he's young and he has very good potential, and what he did against Vegas in the playoffs was really good. So I think Markstrom will be exposed. I could see them enticing Seattle to grab Jay Beagle or Louis Erickson since they really need to shed those contracts. They could offer a draft pick to protect the roster, and other players they could be going after are Josh Levo, Brandon Sutter, or Troy Stecher. From the Washington Capitals, the Seattle Kraken will draft left wing Carl Hagelin. Now, I don't think Washington will either protect their roster or entice Seattle to draft anyone specific. And other players that I believe Seattle could take from Washington are Richard Panik or Brandon Dillon. From the Winnipeg Jets, the Seattle Kraken will draft center Adam Lowry. I don't think this is a situation where Winnipeg will protect their roster or entice Seattle to take anybody specific. Other players that I could see Seattle drafting from Winnipeg are Cody Eakin or Nathan Beaulieu. So with the draft concluded, we're going to go over some final roster stats for this team. There's 6 centers, 5 left wings, 5 right wings, 10 defensemen, and 4 goalies drafted. The total team salary cap hit is $70.96 million, which leaves me $10.5 left in cap space to re-sign any expiring contracts or address anywhere in free agency. Some really quick stats about the roster. The average height is about 6'2", the weight 6'4", 204, and 28.3 years old, which is a pretty prime roster. It's pretty big as well. The goaltending averages, all the records of the goalies combined, is 42, 32, and 6. 262 goals allowed average, and 91.9 save percentage, and 4 shutouts between my 4 goaltenders, which I think is pretty good to have as a start for this team. So for projected lineups, this is going to be the offense line combinations. You got Bacher, Brazard, and Smith as the top line. Second line is going to be Hala, Ryan, and Fost. Third line is going to be Nichushkin, Nash, and Hartman. And fourth line would be Hagelin, Lowry, and Chris Wagner. As far as the defensive line combinations go, I think the first pairing is going to be Adam Larson and Jake McCabe, followed by Robert Haig and Justin Holl. And then the bottom pair is going to be Jamie Alexiak and Marco Scandella. And goaltending, I think Jacob Markstrom's going to take the starting spot, and then backing him up will be Darcy Kemper. So with that being said, that is my mock draft for the Seattle Kraken. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Once the NHL finally releases the actual protected and exposed rosters for each team, I'm definitely going to revisit this. I personally can't wait to see what's going to go on. Thank you for sticking around. If you want more content, please like this video and subscribe for more. And with that said, I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks.